the difference between story and narrative.
Okay.
A narrative is the arc. A narrative is what the company creates to connect all the departments, our vision, our strategy. That's our narrative. I call it the connective tissue. A story is kind of like a moment in time.
Okay.
Right. And so if you're going to tell a story, you're going to be really clear about the point of the story. You're going to have an overarching narrative for the company, for your role, for your team, right? It's like
that makes sense.
It's like when, you know, in enterprise sales, when you're going to do the big dog and pony show, right? And you need to have some connective tissue between all the different stakeholders that are on your team that are presenting, right? If you sell multiple products, you got to connect all those products together. You got to connect everybody in the room to a narrative.
Yep.
And then there's going to be little stories
for each one of them
built throughout.
Okay. I like that. I like that. So what, you don't have to say your favorite, but like, what is a story that you love telling and why?
And you know why? You know what the story is? It's about you. It's about us meeting.
No way. All right.
So I was at Salesforce, as many of you know, where John and I first met. And John followed the framework of why you now and sent an email to Frank Van Veenendaal, who was at the time the president, and George who was the CMO at the time. And they both, and I was running enablement, productivity, strategy. And they both, Frank and George, saw the email and they thought it was so well written and it was so good that they sent it to me. And they said, we want all of our reps doing this. And I was like, damn it. Fuck. By the way, there's my oh shit moment. I was like, oh shit. Now I have to take a meeting with this guy. Well, I don't know. And so I have a meeting with him and I'm like, okay, so what you're saying is compelling. And I have to kind of follow through because my bosses are saying, we want our teams to do this. And so we decided to do a proof of concept, bring in you and Jeff Hoffman. And you did it, and who's here? And you did a training for us. And everybody in the room was like, that was the greatest training I've ever experienced in my life. And I sat there and watched and listened to everybody. And I was like, oh, wow, there is something here. And as a result of that, John and I rolled this out to every customer-facing individual at Salesforce, and we traveled the world together, training everybody on his framework, and we became best of friends.
Almost immediately.
Immediately.
It was literally like, I make the joke of, Step Brothers, right? Did we just become best friends?
And I think we had a moment. It might have been in Singapore where we're like,
all right. We just
okay. Because you're traveling together and you're like, I don't really know this person. Cool. Like, because there's the work, there's your like work personality, and then there's your like personality. And we both broke down the personality, and we were like, oh yeah, I like you. So that's honestly one of my favorite stories.
I love it.
Without question.
So one more question for you. Biggest learning lesson of your career. Like what a mistake you made and what you learned from it.
I have a tattoo of it about it on my arm. Look, I was at a very large company. I've been fortunate enough, I've worked at a lot of them. And unfortunately, in big companies, you got a lot of egos.
Yes.
And it's easy to get caught up in the momentum of egos. Everyone's trying to take credit for work. Everyone's trying to basically be bigger than maybe what they really are. And I got caught up in it as well. And I had a boss, and it wasn't me. It didn't feel like me, but I felt like I had to play the game. And I don't play politics well. I don't do all that well. And I had a boss at the time who said, look, this is going to be a hard ask of you because maybe you've been burned in the past, which I had. And he's like, I need you to trust me. I need you to shut the fuck up and do your work and let me go speak on your behalf. Let me go promote you. You just keep your head down and keep doing your work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you, even though I didn't have like a whole lot to work off of. But how we approached it, I was like, all right, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to trust you. And it was the best thing that ever happened.
Okay.
Best thing that ever happened.
Cool.
The best thing, and it's such a great lesson.
So it's weird because I have the exact opposite story. So here's an example. So when we got bought by Thrive Networks, started that company, got bought by Staples, right? And the guy Jay Baitler, I still remember him to this day. He ran the $12 billion part of Staples contract division, and he interviewed us. And we had consultants coming in. I was like 27, so I had no fucking idea what I was doing. And so we had consultants come in and tell us like what to say, like what to expect when the executives come in and interview the management team, right? So I was like, okay. And you know me, man, I'm a terrible liar. I'm about as transparent as it gets. So this guy's telling me shit that I need to say that I really don't believe.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm a company guy, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. So I sat in front of the guy. So what do you think about the the acquisition? I was like, oh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic.
You're towing the company line.
And in the back of my head, I'm like, you guys are gonna chew us up and spit us out. We're all gonna be fired in 6 months. Like this is gonna be brutal, whatever. And he saw right through it, right? And then afterwards, the CEO met with my CEO, and my CEO was like, "What'd you think of the team?" And he was like, "Oh, everybody's awesome." He's like, "I got one concern though." I was like, "Who?" Like, "John." And my CEO was floored. He's like, "Are you out of your fucking like out of anybody I thought you were gonna love? It was John."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Why?" He's like, he's not the guy." And Jim, who was my CEO, decided to try to protect him. So he fought for me, obviously, and I stayed there. But he prevented me from talking to Jay.
Yeah.
Because he felt like if I did, I would take my filter off and Jay would fire me and all this other shit.
Yep.
But ultimately,
That's interesting.
he actually did me a disservice.
Yes. Yes.
Because fast forward, when I ultimately did get fired, and I circled back to Jay and I said, "Hey, would you mind if I just learned from can I get some feedback based on what happened here?"
Yeah.
And biggest learning lesson of my career. He said, "Yeah, yes." And the first thing he said to me was, "John, first of all, the fact that you came to me asking for feedback after what happened to you tells me more about you than I knew in the year working with you."
Make note of that, people.
Okay.
Make note of that. If something goes sideways, go back, ask for feedback. Be like, what can I learn from this?
He's like, "I love mentoring young leaders. And the fact that you came back," he's like, "you have an hour of my time. I'll tell you whatever." And I had 10 questions prepared.
Yeah.
I was like, "You can be as open or as honest as you want to be. You don't have to tell me." He's like, "Nope." And that was my MBA. And the question I had for him was, "Would you have been open to this type of meeting back when I was working for you?" And he was like, "Of course I would have. Why wouldn't I have?" I was like, "Well, because I told I wasn't really allowed to."
Coached.
I was allowed to. And he's like, "Well, why weren't you?" And he goes, "Let me ask you, what's the risk?" I was like, "What do you mean, what's the risk? I get fired. Like I come to you and I take my filter off and I go fucking crazy, right? And whatever." And he's like, "Well, let me ask you something." He goes, "Say you went over your boss's head, you had this conversation, and I absolutely shredded you. Like I was like, and I ratted you out to your boss." He's like, "Would you have wanted to work for me?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Well, then do you think you might have made it your own choice on what you want to do, get out the door here?" I was like, "Probably." He goes, "Let's flip it over. Say you came to me and we had this conversation."
Yeah.
He's like, "Do you think the last year of your life would have been a little bit easier?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm going to ask you again, what's the risk?" And I was like, fuck.
I mean, it's a good lens to look at decisions you have to make, right? So, like, what's the risk? But it's so interesting how like literally two exact opposite. I got coaching saying like, shut the hell up and let your work do your talking. You got
I think
coaching.
that trust factor. I trusted him.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it wasn't just trust. It was, I think, my disdain for not wanting to play the game.
Yeah.
I'm like,
totally.
fuck this. Like,
by the way, it's a 27-year-old ego just saying that right there, right? You know, because look, there's like, oh, we just got acquired. I can help build a company.
Oh no,
badass. Like,
he knew in that meeting that I wasn't the guy, and he was 100% right.
And
he was 100% right.
And by the way, so the coaching, regardless of the coaching, it all played out the way it was supposed to play out because that's how life works.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly how life works.
Yes, indeed.
I love it.
All right,
it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I guess you got more people to come to interview.
Thanks for coming in.
Play a little.
Always. I'll grab some ping pong a little bit. All right. Later.
I got you some whiskey.
All right. Thank you. All right. Who's next? Anybody want to interview? Come on over. Hey, by the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to light them up. Is there any questions on that chat right there? Yeah, I could use some water. Actually, Anish, could you grab me some water? South Africa, some people calling in from? Nice. South Africa. Good Lord. There you go, Philly kid. So these are all directional mics. So if this camera here and mic here.
Talking about.
Just shooting shit. No, this is opportunity they're gonna ask a couple of questions about learning experiences, stories, and then just try to help the audience learn from our mistakes in a lot of ways.
Oh yes.
So Jamie, do you want a quick little introduction, background, and how we know each other a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jamie Diglio. I'm the founder of Inverse Consulting. I do leadership and sales team coaching and development. And my background's all corporate. I was at Gartner forever, like 13 years. And then I was at Microsoft working with like lots of financial services clients, helping them with their technology and digital strategies. So my background, it's like working with lots of large enterprises.
Love it. And now you're on your own bike. So what you're going to find a common theme here is almost everybody in this room has done the corporate gig and now is not doing the corporate gig because we don't really fit in that structure, or we learned that it wasn't really lighting our fire, right? What did you make kind of that switch for you? Like when it was like corporate to taking the risk on yourself?
Well, I think what happened was I was like really successful, and it was because I understood people, right? I understood psychology, I understood how to like understand people. And I found that more and more at the time, it was like sales was becoming more like scripted, and that we wanted to just like follow the process and follow the sales process. And so part of that for me was like I really kind of lost who I was as part of that, and like what made me uniquely good at what I did. And so it was this sort of realization that this one size fits all playbook doesn't work. And so for me, it was a burnout moment where I had this big wake up call about like, who am I? And then from that, I was like, I got to figure it out, because I didn't feel like I could really talk about that in my corporate environment.
Okay. Why not?
I think again, this was like 10 years ago.
Yep.
So, back then nobody really talked about burnout. And for me, it was like I had a stress response in my body where I couldn't feel my legs.
Really?
And it was a big wake up call for me. I had 2 young kids.
So your body literally shut down?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like I was in a client meeting and I literally couldn't feel my legs.
No way.
And you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It takes like a wake up call like that. And it was really more a representation that I didn't know where I stood. I kind of had lost my foundation, my why. I didn't really have anything to give. I was very much like trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be, like a lot of things, and I had to come back to who I was. So it was this like wake up of, hey, there's a better way to do this. Like, what do I need? And I found that, despite a lot of companies having, lots of like training, they weren't really, everybody needs something different.
Yep.
And so when we can understand what someone wants, what they need, we can sort of remove that head trash like that.
Yep.
That is holding them back. And how do we help them be more effective? Like what motivates them, what drives them?
Do you think that's a maturity thing? Like so you deal with reps who are at that inflection point a lot, right? Is it a maturity thing where you have to just go through some shit before you realize, or do you find that there are people that do know who they are, and they just need a little bit of guidance to figure out how to apply that?
I think a lot of this stuff I think it depends. I don't necessarily think it's just a maturity thing, because I work with people who are leaders who have been doing it for a long time, and they're like, I got to figure this out. Like, I have no idea what I'm, where I'm at, whatever turning point. And, because things have shifted, they've sort of been in this, they get stuck.
Yep.
So with younger people, older people, I think it's more of just, this is stuff like the stuff I talk about is like stuff that nobody really talks about, right? Like what are your strengths? What do you want? Most of us, what we do is we sort of follow this path of like what we think we're supposed to have. And we're kind of comparing. I always say like right now, like it's super, you get stuck in the war room because you're doubting yourself because you're seeing everybody else's highlight reel.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing the real.
Yep.
And so we sort of like constantly comparing ourselves about like, I hear all the time, I'm not successful enough. I'm not where I thought I would be. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I get it. But where do you think, what would success be?
No.
And they never know. They don't have a definition.
Really?
No. So specifically.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Specifically. So like the goal is like, let's get clear on what you want for you, not necessarily what you think you're supposed to have or what you're supposed to be doing. What do you want?
What have you found some of the more interesting definitions of success that have been uncovered through this work, right? Because I think a lot of people, the superficial definition of success, of money and whatever, but obviously success that's not everybody's definition. That shouldn't be, quite frankly. Have you ever found like a really unique definition of success that somebody found?
Yeah. I mean, I think just people being able to understand like what they're like, for example, I'll think of like a client that I had, like was a fairly successful sales leader, and sort of like feeling like, all right, what am I don't feel like they were now managing managers, and and sort of like feeling like a little lost.
Mhm.
And so what we did was like, all right, well, what is the thing you want to do? Well, I really want to continue to sort of figure out how I can like coach and teach with, you know, real hands-on. And so we worked through like, all right, how can you go and you know, teach and do things at the local university, like where they went to school.
Nice.
And so people often think, oh, I need to like change my career or whatever, but it's not. It's like, it's a reframe and thinking about the impact you're making. And so that's what oftentimes people get stuck and they kind of don't see the impact you're making. So if we can help reframe it and go, all right, well, this is the other thing. You kind of think of it as like a major and a minor.
Yeah. Okay.
In school. Like, what's your major, right? Like, what do you do right now? But like, what's the minor? What's the thing that you really love to do? And then how do you double down on that within your current job? And so when you help people see that they can actually do other things outside and like reframe, it helps them to think, oh, right, actually I can, you know, start to, whatever that interest is, to help them, you know, feed that feeling of like, I'm not, you know, I'm not contributing or.
All right. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Two more questions. One, biggest learning lesson from a failure. So a fail, like, or, and I put failure in quotes, like biggest mistake, biggest learning lesson that you could say, you know what, that was, yup, but I learned it. Because I would like the whole thing of failure isn't failure unless you actually learn from it, right?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, like, I can't even, like, I have so many. I just think like trying to like be like everybody else and like try to yeah, I mean, I just think like thinking that I was supposed to, you know, be a certain way or like have whatever, you know, what this sort of path of success is supposed to be. And realizing that like, that's not what I wanted. And it wasn't like, it's not like I had like parents or anybody being like, oh, you need to have this big corporate career or whatever. I wanted to go into business. That was like, I always joke. I was like, there's like this, so random. But there's this Barbie. I'm dating myself. There was like this one Barbie that was like the business Barbie and like would
nice.
Sat and like it was like, and she sat and people probably like, I'm like totally aging myself right now. She sat at a desk with a computer and she carried a briefcase and she wore a suit.
Hey.
And I was like, I want to be that.
Representation matters.
It's so funny. But no, it's like, I don't know. I just like, it's like you sort of, you know, as a female, you know, sort of thinking what success would be and like climbing this sort of like imaginary ladder and then like realizing like really a career and a successful career is a jungle gym.
Yep.
And it's like, what do you do? And as you age and like, what do you think, you know, leaning into your strengths. And so for me, it took like that wake up call, like that big mistake of me trying to be like everybody else that then made me realize I need to do this work on like, what do I really want to be doing? And how do I lean into that? And I didn't leave corporate right away. I started like, you know, stuff I teach now, I started doing it because I needed to work through it. I need to figure out who I was. And so I was actually at the same time, when I was at Gartner, I was working with my team and I was practicing all the things that I now do with teams when I like, how do I bring that out of, how do I make every person that is on my team see their uniqueness and their hidden strength, help them like pull it out of them and help them see it so they can they can compete with that because we're all different, right? So the more you can be, it's like you got to be, what are you interested in to be interesting? You know, if you want it, we want to be less predictable, more memorable. That's how you sell. That's how you influence, like, and consistently that, right? Like you being you, and it's like the opposite of what we're sort of taught in corporate.
Yeah, and I think there's always, most people I know, there's been that like, wait a minute, this just isn't me.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel right. And I don't know why, but it's what I'm being told to do. And I even wrote a blog post a while back called Stop Doing What You're Supposed to Do.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to buy a house, you're supposed to have kids. And there's all this supposed to shit. For what purpose? Does that make you, if by the way, if that all makes you happy, by all means, go do it.
Right.
But and the challenge I have now, it's interesting. I wrote that post, and it was interesting because a millennial jumped on and said, "Hey, I appreciate that, and I can understand where you're coming from. But the difference was, John, when you were growing up, you didn't have like there was structure. So like you could yes, you went to college, you got your job, you did this. So there was a path for you. And yeah, you could break that path, but there was comfort in that path because I didn't really have to think too hard. It's like this is the next step.
Right.
It's like now there's no structure. We can do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what to do. And that's where I think it's incumbent upon the older generation to create structure for the younger generation to learn.
Right.
Because without it, they're flailing all over the place. And I think it's important for us to recognize that at this point because it's starting to, I'm seeing it unravel.
Yeah. I mean, there's too many options.
Way too many.
I mean, you go and look at any university and like how many options to like to major in.
Yeah. I mean,
like
I had like 10, you know what I mean? Like I was like a marketing
so
or
it's like we have ADD in life and
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
And so everyone's trying to like go over here, over here. And even with like consumption of things we talked about it a little bit earlier today is like we're so addicted to, you know, I always say this is more like sales content and like books and leadership stuff and people out there than ever before and self whatever help. But why? So if there's that much content out there of information, why are we more
only
distracted,
Yep.
the less leadership, and uncertain and unhappy?
and
And
lonely.
it's part of it, it's
Yep.
because we're basically looking, it's the in first move,
Yep.
right? It's like you looking for the answer out there, but the real answer is within you. We have to learn how to understand ourselves. I think that's giving like that fun, like the framework of
Yep.
how to think about it. Like that's what I do in my programs to help people, give them some guide rails around, okay, this is your zone of genius.
Yep.
This is the thing that's your winning formula. It's your money ball. Like this
Mhm.
is what your strengths are, what you're passionate about, what people say about working with you, like where your natural like gut instincts are. You know, I have a someone I'm coaching right now who was like, you know, loves improv.
Nice.
And he's like, I really want to get more into acting.
Yep.
And he's like in sales. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't have to quit the sales job,
Oh,
but what do we do? How do we feed that into how you're using it in? So again, that major minor, like you
Yeah.
don't have to like, it's not like you have to stop,
Mhm.
but how do you feed the other thing and then bring that in to infuse into how you're showing up,
Yep.
uniquely,
Love it.
you know, with a, yeah.
Love it. All right. Last question. This is for our sponsor, Sightly. Curious, if you had one wish for a CRM, what would it be?
I don't know, like to just like,
No holds barred. You could do whatever, all the AI stuff in the world. You could do what you wanted to.
be able to like pull in, like kind of like pull in all the sort of, like the shared connections and everything like within the actual.
Like with the team.
Yeah.
Okay. So like almost the LinkedIn connections, but it'll show like the heat map of
Be able to
who
see
knows
it,
who.
yeah, like a
Okay.
heat map that it isn't like I have to like pull from one place
Yeah.
to from another. Yeah,
Cool.
my first initial is like I'm like keep me more organized
Yeah.
than I am, you know.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done.
I
Right?
know, right? It's like, you know, like this is why I need people who can like keep me organized.
Same here. Awesome.
Just to do it. That's
Right.
what I need for my CRM.
There you go. You need an assistant. That's what you want to say.
Just hired assistant.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Yeah.
I don't really have one. I still have like one that just does straight up like stuff that I just don't want to do, but not like an assistant, which
Yeah.
I don't know why, because maybe I'm just too much of a control freak, but
Well, yeah, I mean it's definitely like a,
Yeah.
but I need help.
yeah, me too. Awesome, Jamie. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
right.
Absolutely. Cheers.
And girl.
Anish, any questions on the chat? No? Okay. How many live do we got? Just out of curiosity. Not many? All right, cool.
Bring somebody over.
All right. Say Ryan. Ryan.
Ryan.
Hold on a second. Right, Steve? Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah. What's up, bro?
Are we live still?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's only a few people on, but this is cool. Love it.
I'm excited about this.
Yes, this is just super cat.
So,
shooting shit.
who's interviewing who here?
Either or.
I got some questions for you.
All right, my friend, fire away.
Are we hot? Are we?
Yeah, we are. hot.
Audio's
Yeah,
good.
It's a directional mic, so we're here. Yep.
All right. So, nice job on the event.
Thank you.
This was really fun.
Right.
Something I've been curious about. So, I've had a sales career that's gotten me a chance to hang out with people like you, meet guys like Doug, spend a lot of time with some really interesting people.
Yep.
I've seen 0 to 100 million 3 times.
Mhm.
I've had a chance to, as an executive coach, work with really high performing teams. I've also seen the other side of it.
Yep.
I don't get invited to stuff like this very much anymore. So there was a time when I was invited to a keynote speaker thing. I gave 22 talks in 14 countries in 2019 or 2017. I've done the speaker tour thing. I've done the trainer thing. I've had some sales kickoffs. Like I did the sales kickoff for Airbnb's for work team.
Nice.
But I don't get invited to this stuff very much anymore.
Yeah,
So my question for you is, one, masterclass me. How do I go make sure that I show up on lists for you? I know I was an alternate because I saw the emails,
So
and I'm happy to be.
Yep.
Shout out Kevin Dorsey. But seriously, like, one, what do I do to make sure that I get in rooms like this? And two, the second question is going to be a mindset question.
So I think so the way I broke this list down is I broke a list down of people that I aligned with my values, aligned with my why, and I knew could bring value to a conversation no matter what, right? Because I didn't have a strong plan for this, as you know. So you were on the list, and that was a short list, like it was like 25 total. And so but it was because as I was scrolling through LinkedIn trying to think about because I had a whole bunch of people that I could have done, but I'm like, no. And I kind of scrolled through LinkedIn and I was like, ooh, okay, right. All right, cool.
What's your filter?
Well,
what filter on LinkedIn do you use? Because you have 400,000 people following
just
you.
my feed. It was just my feed. I
So
scrolled through my
being
feed.
in your feed mattered.
Feed my feed
Okay.
absolutely mattered,
Right.
because it's a lot of it is proximity or just showing up. You know what I mean? Like think about a client, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you
There's a recency factor.
there's a recency factor there, and unfortunately I have such a shitty memory that I have to be reminded every once in a while. Oh, like, and I know there's somebody, I guarantee you there's somebody I'm going to walk away from this session with and go, fuck, I should have put them on the list. You know what I mean? So I think it leans towards, from a sales standpoint, showing up. And I've come to realize that there's a group of people that you meet and you have that connection, but then life gets in the way. And you don't follow up, you don't connect, you know what I mean? We don't see each other for another 2 years for whatever reason it is, and you pop up, and then it's like, oh my God, like, why haven't I talked to him in a long time? So I think the older we get, I don't know about you, but the smaller my circle gets. And the smaller my circle gets, the more I realize how important those people are to me.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to the point where I'm now like proactively engaging with the people that I want to stay connected with versus all the people that I'm connected
That want to
with.
be connected to you.
And so I think that's it. It's showing up for the people that matter.
Yeah.
And being there just in case there's a memory lapse of, right? And even if it's just I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've just kind of reached out to somebody because I hadn't talked to them in a while and said hi. And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? We're in an hour-long conversation. Like we just hadn't talked in a while. Like, so I think that would, to be invited, well, on my end, I don't know other events because I don't get invited to a lot of events either anymore these days. I don't get invited to speak. I mean, keynotes for clients, sure. Sales training, absolutely, but not conferences anymore. Like nobody's knocking down my door to come speak at Dreamforce or HubSpot or any of that stuff like I used to. Maybe it's because I've kind of been there, done that, and I don't want to as much as I used to. But
Do you think you're projecting that out?
I probably am. I know I am. Because I traveled 2 million miles in 10 years, and I have a 14-year-old kid right now that I got to be there for. So I'm actively kind of like avoiding that stuff. But I want, like, these are the type of events that I care, like getting good people together, not the fucking huge conference that, I'm going to say hi to 1,000 people and not remember anybody. Right. So,
Well, when your podcast started to blow up a few years ago, I was like, oh, I really want to do that. But I didn't tell you I wanted to do that. we got to do a podcast a few months ago because you reached out to me.
Yeah.
And I thought about that recently. I had an experience that made me think, should I be reaching out more and telling people this is what I want to do? If yes, I don't think that means that you just open yourself to me pitching you every one of my ideas, but like, if yes, how do I go do that?
I don't know, man. I think it's more about the personal connection of let's catch up.
Yeah.
That leads to what you're up to, that then reminds me that you're the person that I need to keep on that list. So, because what I don't want is, and you don't want it either, right? Like me calling you, what's up, Jay? Right? Oh, let me tell you about all the stuff that I've done. You know, I've
it's a pitch slap. We see that on LinkedIn all the time.
And then that actually pushes me away, right? It's like, oh, great. Every time I talk to him, he's gonna fucking tell me what he's doing and try to get me to introduce him to somebody.
Yeah.
It's just more about like I said earlier about the AI. The one thing that AI can't do is give a shit.
That's
right.
True.
It just can't. It can't care. I mean, it can pretend to.
Yeah.
And I think that care factor is going to mean so much more moving forward.
Right.
That's what's memorable. A transaction, an event, a intro, a whatever, whatever. But the feeling that you have when you're connecting with somebody, that's going to be more important moving forward.
I just had an interview with a psychiatrist where she let me ask her a lot of questions about her practice.
Okay.
And her practice specifically is integrating psychedelics into psychiatry.
I love that. Yeah.
And so,
like ketamine and
so she's based in Vancouver, where there's an active MDMA presence happening in Canada because different laws and different ketamine is also very prevalent there. Yeah. But as a doctor from UCLA, so she's got a pretty wide perspective just in terms of like, okay, West Coast, North America, but it also traveled a bunch to find integration with like the things that have existed in a long time in indigenous communities and others, right? So anyway, we had a conversation where we started talking about this give a shit factor that you're talking about. And one thing that she pointed out was that there is actually a hormone that is in our bodies to bond us together, and this bonding hormone.
Okay.
Right. And so that's oxytocin. You hear it, you think about it like, oh yeah, oxy is like, people want to like oxytocin is about all like being happy. And we think about the happy hormone. Happy hormone is also what drives a mother to bond with a baby. It's also the hormone that drops after menopause or during menopause. So she was explaining to me that there's an incredible, powerful group of women who rise up because they have less of that give a shit, but still have that empathy. Right. And so like, to be more specific, it's not so much give a shit. It's like, less of the I have to bond and care about what you think, but more of the I'm empathetic and I want to like make a difference in the world and draw boundaries. And like I've had personally, like the times that I've gone astray with interpersonal relationships are times when the boundaries are blurring. And so when she was teaching me about this, I'm like, okay, so I think her bias is like, hey, there's this group of people that we need to like pay more attention to instead of write off, which is absolutely true. But when I heard that, I thought, okay, she's not saying like, I can't go learn from that, right? Because I don't know shit about that space, right? Like I'm the last person you should ask me any questions about. But as I have learned from, like this conversation and others, it's like, oh, there's actually like some of our bonding and give a shit hormones is actually not serving us well if we worry too much about what you think, right? So then I go, well, John's not having me on a show because I'm not doing any cool stuff. But if I hit you up 4 years ago when the show starts to take off, I said, hey, John, last year I gave 22 talks in 14 countries, all about sales for founders. Would that be interesting enough to go make it happen? See, but I never sent that because it's like, oh, then I'm pitching and I'm pitching myself. And I think what happens for me is like, I got into founder mode where I started to really worry what everybody else is thinking. And that I don't think served me well, especially trying to build my own agencies, build my own startup. Like, I think it didn't. We tried to launch a film about startups from around the world, and we didn't have enough of the here's why you should come care, right?
I think that, it's actually been a common theme with the people that I've been talking to, this like what you're supposed to do or what everybody else thinks about you, like the FOMO factor or the, oh my God, I'm not good enough thing. Like, I don't care. And I'm looking at everybody who's watching this or listening to this. I don't care how successful you are. The imposter syndrome happens to the best of us. The self-doubt happens to the best of us. The, oh my God, I'm not good enough happens to the best. I mean, I have 400,000 fucking followers on LinkedIn. So I should be like, I don't give a fuck. But every time I see Kevin Dorsey do a post and he gets like 99 comments on it, mine gets 10. I'm like, I shouldn't give a shit about that. Like, that's a good post by Kevin. But then
Yeah.
I'm like, well, wait a minute, why didn't mine? And well, oh my God, my engagement.
So wait, are you going into engineer mode of like, I need to fix my post? Or are you going to like an envy jealousy mode?
Both.
Okay,
Like,
right.
it's like, why? Wait
I
a minute.
appreciate you saying that.
That's a, or, you know, and Kevin usually puts really good shit out, but sometimes I'll see like stuff that is just dog shit and it fucking explodes. And I'll be like, wait a minute, I just spent
Yeah.
like an hour putting together a insanely thoughtful, and I did all the best practices, and I only got 20 comments on it. So yes, jealousy, because I just think that's human nature in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, right? But then it's like, okay, well, how can I get better? And then I kind of get to the point where I'm like, what am I doing? I don't care.
Yeah.
Like why am I caring so much about this? Why don't, it goes back to the conversation we had. Like, if I can make the difference for one person, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Like my favorite story, one of my favorite stories about my podcast is I was at an event. It was a Trillium in Boston at Inbounds. And some kid comes up to me and he goes, John, can I give you a hug? And I was like, I'm a hugger, so fuck it, right? So I give the kid a hug, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, I just want to say thank you. And I was like, why? He goes, you saved my life. And I was like, come on, dude. I'm like, I don't even know you. How do I save your life?
Yeah.
And he goes, no, you don't understand. He goes, when your dad passed, because it was right after my dad passed away. And he's
Remember
like,
you sharing a lot of very vulnerable content around that time.
and I was like, I was struggling, you know what I mean? But I was talking through it. I was basically using that as a therapy session for myself. Just
This is
talking
around
through it.
2020, right?
Yep. No, 2021. He passed early
Okay.
2021.
Okay.
And you know, and I was struggling through it, but I got through it, and I was whatever. And he's like, John, my mom died. My brother died the same day unexpectedly. So he knew his mom was going to die. It was like cancer or something like that. But his brother died literally the same day. His job fired him for taking too much bereavement time, and his wife left him all in 1 month. Like, I was like, what the? And he was like, I was sitting in my car contemplating suicide. And somehow I was listening to your podcast. I don't know why, whatever. And you talking through your dad and what you were going through gave me. And
A little bit of hope to step forward. Take
Dude.
that one little step.
if nobody ever listens to my podcast ever again,
Yeah.
I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
so
I appreciate that, but I think that we all have people in our life that we've never thanked, that
Yep.
we've never followed up with,
Yep.
or that we've got some inspiration from,
Yep.
that we've never acknowledged that for one reason or another.
Yep.
And the fact that this person said it is
Oh.
a sign that there's actually a lot more people. You know, that one is like, there's a clear black and white moment. There's not many of those in
No.
our lives, very clear black and white.
Yeah.
But you thinking about that, like, who else does that also touch, right? Like, what rep is using their Make It Happen planner right now that you will never know what she's doing, but she's crushing it. She
Yeah.
has been since you ordered it.
That's one of my favorite things is somebody will pull out like a binder from like 2010 and be like, here's my Basho binder. Here's what I still have it. I'm like, shit, man, that's awesome.
I don't think I have any paper stuff from your training
Yeah.
on my team, but I get curious sometimes. There's a lot of great training you do
Mhm.
that that isn't available out there in the world.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, like, how have you thought about content? Because like one good example is the scorecarding.
Yep.
And I know you sell the scorecarding, you
Yep.
do the training on negotiating. You also have the ability to build scorecarding into the CRM.
Yep.
I assume that it all starts with the rep mindset, which is what we hired you
Yep.
way back in the day for,
Yep.
is like help that rep mindset and understand the give and gets.
Yep.
I have wanted to show people a video or a blog post of John Barrows explaining it.
Yeah,
I go all the time.
yeah.
And I've always been curious, like, how come I can't find that? Is it because it's an IP thing? Or
That's the balance.
How do you think about it?
Yeah, that's the balance. So like the balance of free content versus paid content,
Yeah.
I've always struggled with because I've always been like, give it a fucking way. But you know, I realized that and Jeff Hoffman, my mentor, who's
Yeah.
actually the one who came up with the scorecard in the first place, he actually woke me up a little bit because him and I compete, but we don't.
Yeah.
But he's like, John, you know how I beat you all the time, right? And I'm like, how? And he's by far a better
Yeah.
sales professional than I am. But regardless, he's like, every time I get into an opportunity that you might be involved in, I ask, why would you pay for John's shit? Just go he gives all his stuff away for free. Go on his YouTube channel, go on
Well,
his,
that's not even true though.
but to a certain degree it is, because I'll explain it. I won't open up a spreadsheet and go fill in this, fill in this, but I'll explain, okay, you can do this, and I'll throw that out on a webinar. I'll talk about it on a podcast. So it's kind of like you could get your Harvard degree without paying for it if you really wanted to, but most people still need it.
Hey, the university stuff on YouTube is all fire, but nobody's got the time to go. People have the time to do it, to decide you're going to do it. That's the part.
That's why people need, trainers and coaches, because, we know we could go to the gym. We could go on Google and say, what's a good workout, but I want somebody there to coach me through it. So for me, it's more about, I try to give away as much as I possibly can, but there are some gated things that I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of the special sauce here that you're going to have to work for or pay for. So
that's cool. Well, thanks for humoring me and letting me flip the script on you a little bit. Did you have questions from the live stream?
2 questions. One is, biggest mistake you've made and what did you learn from it?
Okay.
And then the other one's just separate one just for the CRM stuff, but biggest mistake you've made that you, and kind of your biggest learning lesson from it.
You know what? I've got a series of mistakes in my sales leadership career that all fall into the same bucket. And I haven't told these stories publicly this way. So I'm going to tell you less than I want to until I know that I can find some permission from people that might have been involved. But there's this bucket of mistakes from my sales leadership career that are times where I've compromised my own values. And the specific compromise I'll get into. I'm not going to leave that all vague, but times of thinking like, I want to make sure the team thinks I'm cool, so I'm going to do it this way. But what we don't realize is that when we start to do I'm going to try to be cool, is that we are actually in our head thinking about what they want. It's like, think about an interview, right? Like the interviewer could rightly say, are you telling me what you think? Or are you telling me what you think I want to hear? And then you could actually go another level of like, are you telling me what you think that I think that you think that I want to hear? Right? You can do this all day, right? So you end up with a Good Will Hunting interview.
Yes, exactly.
Guy, right? So there's this bucket of mistakes that are times where I've like kind of compromised myself with like, what does the reps think that I should do? How should I be cool? Or what is cool? And a lot of those folks, like I joke with my wife when she'd meet my team that she'd go, your sales team is so nice. And my sales teams have been the best. But she'll say that, and I would very offhandedly be like, Jenny, they're paid to be nice to you. And I was saying things like that, and I realized that I was actually digging a rut of like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not that cool. These guys are the cool guys. They're going out to places like this, having a blast. And then I'm thinking, okay, now how do I reverse engineer being one of them? But not a lot of the leaders that we have around, we want to be one of us. Like we do this thing in the national election cycle where all the like primary candidates have to go drink a beer. It's probably in Boston, New Hampshire for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? It's like everybody's like has the awkward beer moment. It's like some of these people drink beer, some of them don't. I personally don't care, but I understand that they're trying to like be likable. And so I think if I had to say there's one challenge, there was a time when I was trying to be likable with a mixed group of reps, and I said some things that were just off. And for me, I was driven by how do I fit in, be cool, be liked, be a part of this, do the thing that I see them doing. And that compromised me in a big way. Now, I got really lucky in that the time that it was the absolute worst was where I offended somebody who has a lot of class. And that made it feel worse in the moment, but a whole lot better long term to get right. Because they were classy enough that they didn't let me off the hook. They held the boundary. We had a clear and honest conversation about it, as opposed to, I'm going to wait for my chance to stick a sword in your back. Right. And so that, and that's come up, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to screw up. And if you're going to be a sales rep, you're going to screw up. And if you're going to be a sales rep working for a leader who's a screw up, you're going to screw up even more. So like, we got to figure out how to like apply grace, for lack of a better word, to how we interact with people, how we interact with the people on our team. And then how do we interact with ourselves? So that's a big piece of my personal journey of like, how do I do that?
Do you share your values with your team?
I do. It's been a long time since I had a team, but
when
I worked, you probably crossed paths with Suresh Khanna years ago at Adderall. He was my boss at Adderall.
Yes. Okay.
And I tell my coaching clients, the people who are like new VPs of sales that are going from Series A to Series B, the same stage that I love, same I got to watch Suresh go through. And one thing that he did that I'm sure came from his Google days, but I give him a lot of credit. I don't think I've ever told him this, but I give a lot of credit to it. But he went and he put our sales team values up on the wall, not the literal wall because we were starting to spread out and be a bigger team. But every chance he got in a meeting, it was on the slide deck. And when we had to make hard decisions on that team, we changed comp. He pointed at them. And so now I'll tell clients, I'll say, hey, tell me about, what the values exist. Oh, I've been meaning to talk to the team about that. I've been meaning to do this. I've been meaning to do that. Right?
Start there.
Well, when I think that about that story with Suresh having to change the comp plan and pointing at his values that were up on a monitor, I actually tell people about being a kid. I grew up in a church that had its values up on the wall. Somebody went through and made little gold letters and stuck these things up. They probably thought about it really hard. I'm not practicing that religion at all, really, but in that church anymore. But I still have some fond memories of somebody being like, this is it, right? This is that thing. And so if you do that with a sales team, you can make it through a lot of, I was going to say you can get away with a lot. I don't mean that. I mean, you can get through a lot of hard times because you can point to it and say, this is the value. This is where we're off. This is where we're on because of this value. In this case, you changed comp because of this value of being the best place to start your sales career. The older guys on the team, they happen to be all guys, the top 5 earners on the team, were going to be readjusted. And that would give us enough room to pay the base salary to go bring reps from interesting companies because we wanted people who had been salespeople before. The top reps at our company were all people who came from kind of a ragtag bunch. It was a little bit of like a, let's see what will work out. But we couldn't recruit without a base salary. And he leveled everybody and he basically made it so that if you were a top rep, you were going to get readjusted, but there are ways that you could leave, stay in the family, or look for other ways to make an impact that might be financially interesting to you. And then a couple of people got equity and we trued up where we could, but it all started with him like pointing to the wall, like he was running Sunday school.
One more step to that.
Yeah.
Do you give them permission to push back on you when they think what you're doing doesn't align with the values?
I think that's extremely important.
Okay.
But it also comes with a lot of EQ from the leader and being in a comfortable place yourself. If you're not in a comfortable place and you make that offer, they know you're kidding. And some smart ass sales rep is going to go call you to the carpet on that. And that's not going to be great for anybody. So don't offer it unless it's actually true. And then if it's actually true, then you also have to offer a way to do that. So I've been fortunate in that in my coaching career, I crossed paths with some really high potential folks. And years ago, I was doing a career coaching session with a Top Gun instructor. Not just, I had met several Top Gun pilots, but I've had the chance to coach 2 Top Gun instructors. And one of which was making a big pivot in his career. And he just shared with me that he did not know how he was going to work with other people at that caliber. And when it came down to it, we talked a little bit about like what makes that job special. And the team, the bonding, the people where you live, you're living your best job ever. Like some of that momentum is there, but also the ability to like call someone out and give real feedback. If you're, fighter pilots have to give feedback in real time to each other, regardless of rank. Right? A lot of us, who've had civilian backgrounds, like we think, okay, the military is all top down. The president tells the other guy, and the other guy tells the other guy, and the other guy tells somebody, and they do it. But when you're in a situation where you are given permission for that active feedback, I think about that a lot. I think that's actually like the biggest gift you can have for a team is to give that level of active feedback. And my best performing teams, I have had that. My mediocre and worst performing teams did not have that. And when I had a leader that I couldn't do that for, I didn't feel comfortable doing that all the way down. And so it would be nice to be like, hey, we got the values on the wall. Come tell me if you got a problem. Call me out if I'm in the wrong position. It's never been quite like that. But I have a feeling that some of the people that I was working around were able to operate differently because we had some shared, we at least had time and seat together. We at least had a little bit of bonding from that. We had a close relationship, which is safety and security, right? So when somebody feels secure, they can talk to you about that stuff. So if that takes a really dramatic situation, so be it. But I'd like to be in a place where somebody goes, thanks for the help, boss. This is the way I'm going to do it.
I think that my experience has always been like, maybe not the whole team is going to feel comfortable doing that, but there's 1 or 2 reps that get it and can take that approach to give the constructive feedback to you if you're in a good place. You know what I mean? And you're open to it. I've had a couple of reps call me out and I've been like, okay, fair. You know what I mean? It's kind of like your kid. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain point where your kid calls you out on something and you're like, shit. Like
I hate it when they're right.
I know,
13-year-old.
like, damn.
She's right. Not all the time, but he's right.
Every once
And
in a while.
that's tough.
And you have to, in those moments, you have to, you're right.
Yeah.
You can't fight that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're going to stay true to that, you have to, nope, absolutely. I'm sorry type of thing. So
That's right. Chris Voss.
you're right. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. This is just for our host, sponsor Insightly here.
Yeah.
If you had one wish for a CRM, what would it be?
Oh, I thought this was going to be the best deal question. So in my head, I was going a different direction.
No.
If I had one wish for
a CRM, like if you had
CRM.
a blank slate for CRM and you could have one wish for like all the bags of shit CRMs that are out there.
So fortunately in my career, I've run sales and sales ops at the same time, multiple times where not always called sales ops. Sometimes it was just, I happen to be the one who like knew how to do the Salesforce admin thing. I've worked with a couple other CRMs too. I know some people at Sightly. I think that what they're doing is really great. What I really want to see when I think about a CRM is actually before the CRM ever happens, I want to create a system where the reps need to use that CRM because they want to use it, right? So one of the easy examples is reps want to know what they get paid.
Yeah.
And so if they cannot know what they get paid, if they're waiting for like a report from finance, that's one thing. But if you can build into the CRM their ability to have a dashboard they care about, what they get paid, how they're doing, et cetera. And so I would like to see all CRMs make it easier to do the leadership onboarding. Like we just had this conversation about values. How do you have a CRM that helps you impart your culture? And so if the culture that I want for my sales team is that we all win together, well, then I need a feature in that deal that shows, like, I'm pretty sure that they have the ability to tie accounts together, right? Sub accounts, like, you know, the guy who owns 5 bars and then this is one of the bars and then there's employees below that, right? So you have that structure, right? But where do you get to the place where the value is selling together, where I can go and tag people, not just commission splits, but also give each other shout outs. And so I don't know if that's a feature they have, but the overarching feature of like, I want to know that I can onboard culture with the tools I'm using. That's cool as hell. And I think that's something that's not that far because as a leader, we had to do it a lot. We said, what is our culture? How do we build reports around the culture? How do we get the team to do the things that are culturally relevant to this team? And that's what my wish for a CRM would be.
Love it. All right, brother.
This is fun. Thanks, man.
For coming.
Appreciate it.
It's been a good
You want to go get you another Victor?
I think let's have Hoffman come on up. Yeah, he's been sitting in there. Let me ask him and then next, right? Yeah. No, I'm good, man. I'm good.
My hope is that somebody asks you about how often you kick his ass in deals.
I never kick
Because
his ass.
No, remember you said that, like, because you said every time, like, you've come up against me a couple of times. And yeah, I know, but this is when I was giving away a ton of free content. And you were like, well, why would you pay for John's shit? It's all free, right? And that was a wake-up call for me, because I was like, fuck, I'm giving away too much.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad I could help.
yeah, right. Well, you built to be more than you could possibly imagine. So for everybody who doesn't know, this is my mentor, Jeff Hoffman. This is the man who got me.
Sean Barrows.
Well, yes, and
Brother
very-
from brother.
exactly. And
We know each other.
2007.
By the way, Aaron Farley says hi. He's listening right now.
Oh, is he nice? What's up, Farley? What's up, kid?
2006.
6 or 7. Yeah, because I sold. Let's see, June of 2000 was 7 years. 2007 is when I got fired from Staples and got hired at Bachelor. So. And I vividly remember I was, we won't talk about the
I know.
who hired me.
Yeah, it's something we have to keep protecting.
But I remember taking the training, and I actually just told the story on the way over here. You know, at Thrive, I was kicking ass. Like, we were the best in the business by far, fastest growing company in Massachusetts. I was smoking all my competitors. And I really just, I had an ego, but I think it was just work ethic, right? And I thought my shit didn't stink, obviously, right? So I'm like, all right, fuck it. I got to go take some training, because I was taking training from everywhere. And I remember taking the Bass Show workshop. And I remember looking at you going, fuck. Like, I'm not
a good day.
Yeah, well, no. because I was just like, oh, that's what it is. And I think it was the first light bulb in my head of what a true sales professional was.
Oh yeah, well,
For
thank you.
all the right reasons.
Thank
Not
you.
like you know what I mean? Like, but it was like I in that moment watching you deliver what you were delivering, how you were delivering it, it was like a light switch went on.
Oh, thanks,
I was
John.
like, I gotta be more like that.
When I see it the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, we see this job the same way. I'm not sure everyone does. I know people watching this do. I know your fans do, and your clients do, and your customers do, and your reps that have followed you for years do. But not everyone sees it the same way,
No.
unfortunately.
No.
But there's a right way to do this.
Yeah. And so what is define that, right? Because I got in trouble one time in an argument because somebody asked me, John, what do you do? And I was like, I train sales reps how to sell the right way. And they were like, what the hell's the right way? How do you know it's the right way? And I was like, well, I'm kind of ethics and morals and not being a douchebag. And I was trying to
Yeah, that
explain
helps.
it. But it was like, it got me to thinking like, is that an ego statement of mine? Or is like, what's your definition of selling the right way?
I think it's a couple of things. I think one thing is, and I learned this a long time ago, and sometimes I even forget this, but I'm in my late 50s now, and I look back at life, and I think about stuff I believed in my 20s that I don't believe anymore, stuff I believe in my 30s I don't believe anymore. But there's something I've always believed that I still believe deeply today. Everybody wants to be heard. And sales is a lot of that. Sales is and people will nod and go, oh yeah, of course, sales is about listening. No. Everyone wants to be heard. And sometimes what we hear sucks.
Yep.
Like no, and
Yep.
definitely no, and get out, and
Fuck
leave
out,
me
yeah.
alone, and don't call me anymore. Like, if you really want to do this, you got to hear it all.
Yep.
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
The other part of it is, no matter how much we might believe otherwise, all the tricks and techniques and all the stuff we write on LinkedIn and all the stuff we do in our classes and all the stuff we tell our reps, our ability to impact the outcome is very marginal. It's not like we can make people do things, even though we're about to see a great play where that's it's about that.
Yeah.
I can't really make it a grown-up buy or not buy. They're going to buy or not buy because they want to or not. It's not about outcomes. It's about speed to the outcome.
Okay.
So sales is more about how can I shrink the time it takes this person to make a decision?
Mhm.
When they're not ready to make a decision, how do I turn the fire up?
Mhm.
And maybe that decision is a no.
Yep.
But how do I get to the yes or no faster? And if I'm really good at this,
Mhm.
I can shrink that time incredibly. And great salespeople are great at sitting and listening to stuff they don't want to hear.
Yep.
And thinking about how do I shrink that time to outcomes. That's a lot of what we do. It's
So-
about inspiring urgency where none exists.
So that's what I was going to go with this, because the question I think I get the most if I were to do a Q&A and all this other stuff is, how do you create urgency? And I always tell reps, you can't create it. You can uncover it and
That's
you can drive it,
That's right.
but you can't create it.
Cannot create it.
And so how do you, I got my ideas of how I create or how I uncover and drive urgency, but what's your mentality around
Yeah.
uncovering that?
My thing has always been the same. Sell people or treat people or talk to people or deal with people, not to where they want to go, but actually to where they are in the moment.
Okay.
So
Explain.
if someone's feeling pain, sell them pain
Yep.
because that's where they're sitting
Yep.
and that's what they're experiencing. So if they're feeling pain, turn the pain number to 10.
Yeah.
And if they're feeling pleasure and excitement and enthusiasm, then I'm selling excitement, enthusiasm, and pleasure to 10.
Yep.
When we get into trouble in sales is we try to sell the outcome we think they want. Look, if they wanted that outcome, they would have done it already.
Yeah. Yeah.
When the guy walks into the gym and says, I want to get healthy, he ain't healthy. So
Yeah.
I'm going to sell him where he is.
Okay.
And if he's stuck in a rut, I'm going to sell him that rut and he's going to buy a membership. And if he comes in fit and cut, I'm going to sell him fit and cut.
Mm.
And that's where he's going to continue to grow. So it's always about selling people where they currently are, but it's their journey.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm going to rob the person of their journey with my inspiration, I don't have that kind of ego.
Yeah.
Let's figure out where people are, fan the flames of where they are. They'll find their own urgency. They'll get to their place they want to go.
So how do you know you're not going to get there? Like, what are some indicators for you that as you do this, that they're sitting in that, right? And whether it's pain or pleasure,
Yeah, it's
whatever
always,
it is.
it's always activity. It's always
Okay.
commitment. It's always movement. Words don't mean anything.
No.
It's always, what do they do?
Mhm.
You know, it's like, we talk about closing all the time in sales, and it becomes a punchline. But closing is really about asking people to make decisions in the moment.
Yep.
Little or big.
Mhm.
As salespeople, we want to ask a lot of questions and ask people to make decisions about things that are activity driven.
Mhm.
Hey, can you send me this document? Can you sign this piece of paper?
Mhm.
Can you introduce me to your boss? Not, can you tell me about your business? Can you explain how this will impact your outcome?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your budget? When you ask someone to tell you stuff, you can learn,
Mhm.
but you don't know if they're closer or further from buying
Right.
or moving.
Right.
But if you ask someone to do something
Mhm.
and they do it, the chances are likely they'll continue to do it. And if you ask someone to do something and they don't do it, it might be time to walk.
Yeah. Now so let's talk about, because there's a fine line in sales, obviously, between influence and manipulation.
Ah.
And you're a big NLP fan,
I am.
right? And neuro-linguistic programming, for
Yep.
people who don't know.
Hey, if y'all know Tony Robbins, you know what NLP
Yep.
is.
So I actually learned something interesting recently that was a manipulative way to do NLP, which I didn't pick up on, but it makes total sense.
It can be manipulated for sure.
It's the hand motion.
Yeah.
Where you like
Yeah,
this, right?
yeah.
And you start nodding
Yeah.
your head, and
You do
then,
this, when you
yeah.
get to, you do that clap.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's some ways you can manipulate people. What's your fine line between manipulation and influence when it comes to trying to help somebody maybe open up their eyes to something that they're not seeing?
I always think about relationships, professional relationships
Yep.
for sure, but maybe personal, but certainly professional. Do we find agreement that there's value in a common destination?
Yep.
And if the answer is yes, then I don't think I'm manipulating.
Okay.
I think I'm persuading.
Yeah. Okay.
But if we don't have agreement
Mhm.
that the common destination is worth getting to, then anything I'm doing is manipulating.
Okay.
Because I need to believe that you want to go to the same place I want to go to.
Okay.
If that answer is yes, then I'm not manipulating. I think I'm just using persuasive skills.
Okay.
If I have to convince you to go to that place, no, that ain't cool. That ain't cool.
So then, what's your take on Challenger Sale?
So here's my take on Challenger Sale. And look, what a look, I want to be careful here. What a landmark, incredible book, and what an incredible testimony in our industry. It's an important chapter.
Milestone.
Yeah, milestone.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Here's my take on Challenger. I think, honestly, there's probably 5% of the sales world that can do it.
Yep. That's
And for those 5%,
Awesome.
that is a Louisville slugger.
Yes.
But the other 95%, man,
Fucking brutal.
they don't have the social value to swing that.
No.
It's kind of like, this is what I say. You go to a golf store and you see the Big Bertha driver. And so the guy you can't break 100 buys the Big Bertha driver, and he's like, I'm still shooting 110. Is it the driver's fault? No. So I'm not going to blame Challenger
Right.
because the kid who goes through Challenger sales can't do it.
Right.
It's for professionals who have that kind of sensibility.
Yeah.
There's some really great jewels
Mhm.
in that, particularly when it comes to things like the authority close, some
Yep.
pretty heavy duty closes you can get
Yeah,
from
yeah,
that. But at the end of the day, I've never thought that my role with the customer is adversarial.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff in Challenger I just can't
That's-
get behind.
That's why I said I love the lead with insights.
Yeah.
And like get them there.
Yeah.
You make this decision once a year. I help people make it every day. Bullshit is like, come on. Like
No people can get away with that. I couldn't sell that line. I couldn't
do
sell
it.
that
I
line.
couldn't do it either.
I love reverse closes, and he's a fan of reverse closes.
Yes.
So there is stuff in it I like.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I did get myself in trouble. Like when Challenger was hot a while back, I stood up and I think it was about 1,000 people I was presenting, and I was like, could y'all do me a favor and stop teaching 22-year-old kids how to be a fucking challenger?
Sorry.
Like-
Let me take like 30 22-year-old BDRs at a SaaS company and walk them through Challenger sales. Like,
Dude,
this
how
is
do you
a
mind?
disaster. Disaster.
Fuck. All right. So tell me your favorite story, and it could be a favorite close or favorite story in sales that really, for you, is one of your favorites to tell.
Oh, favorites to tell.
And by the way, it doesn't have to it doesn't have to be in sales. It could be in life. It would just a story.
God.
Like what is one when you oh, I got one that you can land and it is one of your favorites to tell.
Yeah, I tell it a lot, so I'll
Yeah.
tell this one.
Okay.
Because it really, it's before I was in the business of teaching and educating, and I was still a rep.
Yep.
And it was a light bulb moment.
Mhm.
You mentioned light bulb
Yep.
moments. So back in the day, way back in the day, I was selling my prospect at the time, my customer at the time was FedEx.
Okay.
And I was I was living in Boston, down in Memphis, back and forth, trying to close FedEx on a big deal, and I was stuck.
Oh, is this the one where you went to the airport? And
Yeah.
oh, okay, wait, go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, this one's good. Yes, please. No, keep going. This is a great one.
I'm stuck. You can tell when the deal stalls.
Yeah.
All the guys I'm with are like, they get late on meetings, late on emails, whatever. And I'm really freaking out. So I'm in the airport leaving Memphis. I grab a magazine. I grab Wired magazine. And on the cover of Wired magazine, or not even on the cover, in an article, was the SVP of customer success at FedEx who's being interviewed. This is an old story. It's from the 90s. And she was talking about how the internet was going to revolutionize FedEx because people could track their packages on FedEx.com instead of calling 1-800-GO FedEx. All right. I know this is a million years ago. So anyway, I'm reading this article and I'm like, okay, I'm selling this product to the tech team that will speed up their website. Now, it will not help this woman's problem at all. So it's not like this is going to like, oh, it's a good user case. It's not.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, this deal is dying.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm going to call this woman. I'm going to call this woman. I'm going to call this woman. So as soon as we land, I can't even wait to get back to my office. I go to a payphone. That's how old this is. In Logan Airport, New York, in Boston. I call the number, general number of FedEx. Hi, can I talk to Susan G? Can I talk to her, please? Who's calling? I just left her offices in Memphis. I'm like out of breath, and I was like crazy. Hold on, please. I get this woman. Yes, Susan G's office. Yes, hi. She doesn't know me. I just left your offices, and I just saw the article in a Wired magazine. I gotta talk to her. Hold on, please. This is Susan. It's a true story. It's a God's honest story.
Yep.
This is Susan.
By the way, he didn't say his name.
I know that's a whole point.
Sorry. Yeah.
Said my company, nothing. This is Susan. I go, hi, Susan, you don't know me. I just left your offices. I was with a bunch of tech guys. We're working on a sale for this product. It's going to make your website go faster. I just read your interview with Wired Magazine. I had to call you. Who on your team should I invite to the next meeting? I mean, I'm just grasping at straws. She goes, oh, why don't you call Donald B? Now, Donald B in 1999 was the CTO of FedEx.
Shut the fuck up.
Players higher than where I was. Like ridiculous. I'm like, okay, never talk to her again. Blah, blah, blah. Emails back and forth. I wind up, get another meeting with these guys, invite Donald B. Get in the room with my miserable buyer who's so done with me and is not buying anything. All of a sudden, the door opens. As soon as the door opens, this guy walks in. They are at attention. Holy crap. I mean, you can feel the heat from this guy. He walks in, he goes, which one of you guys is Hoffman? I'm like, Donald Hoffman. Hey, nice to meet you. Everyone's like, holy crap. He sits there 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, he's like, okay, yeah, I think you guys got everything under control. Let me know if I can be of help. Like, he's very political and good, and he leaves. Never saw the guy again. But the oxygen that this thing threw on this deal, it got it geared up again. It got it lubricated. Now I got the deal moving again. Okay. And they closed. FedEx. I'm a hero at the company. I get an award, blah, blah, blah. I'm on stage at the end of the year getting an award. My CEO is like, Hoffman, you know what I love about this story? I go, what? It's what you said. He goes, did you ever tell him your name? I went, fuck. No. Did you ever say the name of the company? Nope. And the light bulbs went off. I went, this whole thing moved because I'm out of breath at a Logan Airport in real time as a real person.
Yep.
You talk about this all the time, John, about being real.
Yeah.
Down so I read your article. You can't cut and paste that.
No.
You can't do 50 emails on it. You can't scale that. No. All you BDRs out there, you can't do this 50 times a day. You do it once a day. Yeah. And you do a $2 million sale and you go to club. That's how you do this job.
So can I add something?
Yeah, that's the story.
So I love it. But this is art and science. Because the Basho approach.
It's Basho.
So Basho, which is what Jeff came up with, which the training that I took, the way that you made the cold call was to not say your name first, right? So
That's the trick.
I loved the voicemail version of that. Hey, the reason I'm calling is da 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 da. And by the way, this is John Barrows, da da. Right? So you leave the information at the end on the voicemail. But This is the difference between art and science. I was like, this is fucking weird. Like, not saying my name first is kind of odd on a live call, right? So I did it. I was like, all right, I'm here. I gotta figure this shit out, right? So I'm like, hi, thanks for taking my call. Can you da, 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 da. And like, I literally tried it over 50 times. I specifically tried, and I could every fucking time. I got, who is this? What do you want? And I'd be like,
I know, I love it. But that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. It's like, but I always argue. We're going to Glengarry Glen Ross. There's a great scene in the movie, and I know in the play when they like AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. First step in sales is attention.
Yep.
So when they say, "Who is this?"
Yep.
Check off A. You got attention.
Yeah.
That's the first step in a cold call.
Hey.
Like, I was like, "Oh, now they're listening. Now they're
Yeah.
actually. Oh, well, my name is Jeff. What's your name? Wait,
Yep.
okay, this is not so bad."
All right,
Yeah, I
so
love
they're on the
telling
phone
that
with me.
story.
Yeah.
I love telling that story because it's like it reminds us in sales, in all honesty, all seriousness.
Yep.
Sales ain't about us. It ain't about us. It ain't about our posts. It ain't about our personal brand. It ain't about how funny we are, how cute we are, how clever we are. It's about them. We're forgotten. They don't remember us at all. It's about them and what they're doing and where they are in that moment. And if we're smart and we listen and we capture where they are in that moment and we sell them that moment back to them like a mirror,
Mhm.
you can make a lot of money doing this.
Yeah, I love it, man. You know what? You actually, as you were talking, one of my favorite stories of yours is the Larry David story.
Oh,
That story.
that's a classic.
That story is if you want to hear that one, follow up with Jeff.
Podcast. I'll do that. I'll
Yes,
do the
that-
Larry David story. True
Dude.
story. Meeting Larry David on Vineyard.
Unfucking believable.
Almost playing golf with him.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
almost is the story.
Yes.
It's very good.
All right. Last question.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah.
sponsors. If
Yeah.
you had a blank slate and one wish for a CRM, what would it be?
Oh, definitely. If I had a wish for a CRM, it would be for me to go backwards and be able to measure acceleration between sales stages.
Okay.
That's my wish.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Jeff,
Love you, buddy.
love you too.
All right.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming. What's up? Yeah. Yep. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. Perfect. Yes, apparently. Who keeps throwing shit at me? What? Fucking Landis. Yeah, I'm watching you, asshole. Hot seat. Yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah. 7:30. Be there at 7:30. In front of the shirt. Yeah. Or actually, let's meet at the. Hey, Jeff. Let's meet at the W Hotel in the lobby. The W Hotel at 7:30. Yeah, because it's right across the street. Yeah. It's on the 7th floor. That's weird. All right, Stephanie. Thanks so much for coming, by the way.
Thank
You having a good time?
Such a good time.
Yeah.
And so many people have been willing to do these little short videos of why you should get into sales, why you should study sales. And it's so helpful for the students and even the faculty
Yeah.
to just get people motivated to say,
Yeah.
like, why should I do this? What's in this for me?
I've always said this is the greatest profession in the world when done right. It's the worst when done wrong. And so for everybody listening here, Stephanie runs the sales school over at Bryant University, which gives me a lot of hope for the future of sales, because without the formal education of it, this being the default profession is just no longer, I think, going to be viable at this point because of the AI and it's taking over. So having the kids learn it in school and being able to come out with a running start at least, right? So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about with the students that are in your, like how many students come in saying, I want to be in sales versus what's the sales? Like what's the breakdown of your students first? I just kind of understand the ones that are coming into your courses so far.
I'd say 25% of the students come in and they're like, I definitely want to go into sales. My parents are in sales. They're super successful and this is a path for me.
Yeah.
I have like 25% of the students probably are like, I don't know. I've heard good things about the class. I think it'll help me professionally. And then the rest are just kind of still figuring out what they want to do. And they know that learning to sell is probably valuable.
Yeah.
But then there's some that come in like maybe 10% and they're like, I don't think I want to do sales,
Mhm.
but the class aligned with my schedule.
Exactly. So where do you see for the ones, and regardless whether they say they want to or they don't, or I'm just trying to, when do you see the light bulbs go off where they start to get it about what sales is at its core, right? Because we can all
Yeah.
talk about, okay, cold calling and it's negotiating and we can all do that shit. But you know it as well as I do. There's like at the core of sales, there's this, okay, now I think I understand what this is about. It's about problem solving, it's about helping people, it's about caring. When does that happen?
Gosh, the time that they start to really feel like, I think I can do this. It may not be totally understanding, like sales is about helping just yet,
Yep.
but when we do the competitions.
Okay.
And so early on, we try to get them in front of employers
Yep.
and they give them feedback and they're like, you actually did this really well. And they boost up their confidence.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happens, they lean into it.
Yeah.
And then they start to follow people like you, right? And then they're just like, oh my gosh, I need more information. And over time, hopefully before they graduate, that light bulb comes in. Often it's when they have an internship. So they take the sales class, they do an internship, and then they also have some bad experiences, right? They have a company that wasn't really that ethical, right? Asked them to do things that they didn't feel comfortable with. And then they start to learn what's okay for them and, head towards the companies that support helping.
The value, and that's, I think it's almost, and I don't know in college, I wish I could go back and kind of think of where my head was at in college when it came to the core value thing. Because I keep telling reps right now, even younger ones, like when they're in a rut or they're looking for a new job and who should I work for? My advice is always the same, which is take a step back and look, like really get centered on your core values. Because once you get centered on your core values of what really matters to you, not just picking a couple of words because they sound good, but like this is how you live, then you can start to apply those values to look for opportunities, companies. And when you make that alignment, then all of a sudden magic happens. So do you get into mentality, values, and how they should look at things early, or is that too early in school?
We do. We find out what is it that they actually want.
Yep.
Thinking about things. Do I want to be close to my family?
Yeah.
Is having that network and that support system really important to me? Is it having great coaching? Is it professional development? Is it opportunities to advance? Do I care a lot about status? Is it just money? Maybe I want to just travel everywhere and I want to be, all over the place and never at home and just racking up the miles. And so we ask the students to really think about, really, when are they the most happy? When are they most unhappy? And identify what some of these are, because I find that most of us, but especially students, we struggle to be able to think about ourselves objectively.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
understand, like, what do I really want? What I really need? What's going to make me happy? And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand, who am I? What's important to me? What am I good at? And so
Was that the Ikigai, or what is it? Have you heard that? Where it's like the 3 zones of something
We
you're
do.
great at, something you get paid for, and something adds value, and you find that center spot. Is that
We
what
do.
it is?
So we have that in our little black book of social
Okay.
media.
Yep.
And that's the first chapter of figuring out, like, what's important to me? Like, what are my values? What are my experiences?
Yep.
And what am I good at?
Love it.
And so kind of pulling those two together and finding that sweet spot, but then they use that to build their brand on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
a big part of
perfect.
the class too.
Well, and that going back to authentic branding, right? Like the world just is craving authenticity right now.
Yes.
And I think, if there's anything that I could recommend for you reps out there, it's like, don't try to pretend to be something you're not. Don't fake it till you make it. Share your journey, because that they care way more about what you're learning versus what you know. And it's so much easier to be authentic with that and just sharing. That's why Morgan Ingram, who's here, for everybody listening, especially, if you're still in college, Morgan Ingram was like 23 years old. And he was sharing what he was doing was, he was an SDR, and he was one of the first ones who would really start posting videos. But what he would do is he'd like learn something in the morning, whether he'd read a book or he'd listen to a podcast or whatever. And then that day he'd apply it, like whatever it was. And then at the end of the day, he would just light up his video and be like, this is what I learned. I tried it. This is what happens. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not saying this is the best way. I'm just saying this is what it was. This is what I tried. And this was the result.
Yeah.
And he exploded online. Like people were eating it up, and that's how he got on my radar to then hire him as my first sales rep and then put him on a rocket ship to the next level. So That's
Right.
the easy way to be, because I just don't understand it's so much harder to be inauthentic.
Yeah.
But why do you think I'm curious on students these days, where's their head out at when it comes to authenticity and them who they are? Because I mean, we all look at the Instagrams and everybody's perfect. Is it harder for them now, or do they have some perspective that's different than maybe some other groups?
It's totally different.
Yeah.
There is so much value on authenticity.
Yeah.
They don't want to just go on AI and like take somebody's influencer that has great content and do that. Being who you are is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
Not being that like cringy, like salesy, even
Yeah.
though we teach sales. It's like one of the highest values for them.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, one more question, and this is just for Insightly, for our sponsor here. If you had one wish, if you had a clean slate and you had one wish for a CRM, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. So that CRM would be able to automatically take everything from my LinkedIn and create cadences that are editable and deliver reports so that I could oversee my students and what they're doing and maybe even identify where their gaps are so that we could insert some of our AI role plays into it and then just give them like just-in-time sales training.
There you go, the just-in-time stuff. I think that's where we're headed, that I have a lot of optimism for, which is like you're in the system and you're getting coached like right before you do something, as you're doing something, right after you're doing something, and it's objective, not subjective by a manager. It's objective by like Rainmaker and those type of things where it's like, hey, here's your skill gap. This is what you need to fix. So I agree with you on that one. So Stephanie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Been an absolute pleasure as usual.
Oh,
And we will see you tonight at the Glengarry Glen Ross.
I can't wait.
It's gonna be
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. I got one more. Where's Steve? Where are you, brother? Is he here? All right. All right. One more interview and then we're out of here. Okay. What's that? Yeah. We'll be able to pull some stuff out, right? Like. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Yeah. I might get rapid fire for the people who I haven't interviewed. Just, hey, come over here. Like, what's the one wish? What's the one wish? What's the one wish? Oh, man. I wasn't expecting too many people live. Like I said, this is podcast, this is content, this is, and whoever's live, gets the benefit of listening in. I know Aaron Farley is on live. Hold on. All right, I don't know if he's still there.
John, he was in the first 10,000. I was one of the first 10,000. He got
No shit.
He got one of the T-shirts, and he met Reed Hoffman.
No way. Nice. I was 32,142.
And Keith
So-
for boys.
Who was that?
Keith for boy. You remember?
I don't know Keith.
Oh,
no.
okay. Who
Yeah.
sent you BD for LinkedIn?
Oh, nice.
You know who Reed Hoffman?
Yeah, of course I know who Reed Hoffman is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reed Hoffman is actually the one who freaked me out about AI when he did his interview on his podcast where he interviewed himself as the AI.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, dude, I saw it. I
Yeah.
was like, wait a minute. And
Yeah.
it was him talking to him, and it had the avatar of him, and it looked like him. And I'm like, okay. I
So
got
how
it.
do we deal with Leslie's and reflection?
It's fine.
Don't
Yeah,
worry about it.
this is probably more audio than anything else because I'm gonna use this as cut ups for
Before we
podcast.
get into it, what are you gonna ask me?
I was just maybe first of all background, and you walk through kind of some of the acquisitions and those type of things, what you learned. And then you said you really like talking about AI, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so what do you like talking about? What do you
I can
these
talk
days?
about my background.
Yeah, yeah.
I can talk about my company. I
Yep.
can talk about AI.
Okay.
I'm not going to give away too much
course.
in terms of what we're doing,
Yep.
but we're certainly doing a lot in generative
Mhm.
and agentic AI
Yep.
currently. Yep.
So why don't you walk us through background here to give some context to the conversation? So
My background?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then the company.
Yep.
background. I can do that. Great. Let's do it.
yeah, so again, Steve,
Yep.
CEO, Now, do we go CEO Unbounce or CEO of Insightly?
Unbounce is the
Yep.
parent company,
Yep.
and we acquired Insightly a year ago,
Cool.
or less than a year ago.
Let me ask, well, we'll get to that, but let's
Yep.
back it because I want to say why did you make this acquisition? But let's back up a little bit. First of all, I was like learning where you came from. So not just your LinkedIn, but like growing up, family, like how did you get that bug to be the leader, sales, all that stuff? Like, where did
Yeah,
it come
sure. No, great question. I grew up in Boston,
from? Yes.
in Boston,
In the city.
Yeah,
So, yeah, not
I-
just like boss. Like I say boss, I'm in Woburn.
yeah,
So
not the suburbs.
yeah,
I did later raise my children in the suburbs.
Cool.
No, I grew up in Boston and went to Don Bosco Technical High School on
Nice.
Tremont Street in the
Nice.
theater district. So yeah, real Bostonian. Now live in New York. I've
Yep.
lived in New York for 10 years. Yeah, so that's my personal background.
Yep. What did your parents do? If you don't mind me asking.
My dad worked at General Motors
Okay.
for 35 years or something,
Yep.
30 years, and retired. And my mom was a homemaker.
Cool. So nice. So like, because a lot of people, it shapes who they are. Did you? Well, then let's keep going through your progression here because I'm always curious, like where that entrepreneurial bug comes from, right? Where
Yeah.
you decided, hey, I want to do that. I want to go off on my own or do something. Talk to me about. Did you have the DNA for this?
Sure. Well, I've never started a company.
Okay.
I'm not the founder of this company, but I've been part of companies that went from very small to very big.
Yeah, you've had multiple
couple.
exits, right?
Yeah. Constant Contact is probably the the marquee one.
Yep.
Sort of went public in year 7, but I was the 25th employee. So
Jesus.
yeah,
Oh.
there's a lot.
Good for you.
No, but it was great 10 years.
Yeah.
Growth is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Growth is
Especially
a
when
lot.
there's an exit like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's an exit, but growth is really fun.
Yeah.
What's
What's the most fun about growth for you? Like because there's chaos in growth too. What's your favorite part of growing a company? Is it building the structure? Is
no, it's
it
the people part. I think that's
Okay.
that's sort of where I probably have the most skills is managing and leading. I like to say I can't get any of the jobs that I'm hiring people for now because I'm now 10 years into being that.
Yep.
But that is a skill unto itself.
Yep.
So that's what I really like doing. I like leading, managing people. But I just love people.
Is it the dynamics of people? Is it the growth of people? Right? Because there's a lot of different ways that people.
Yeah, some of it's growth.
Okay.
Some of it's, hey, you're not doing your job well. I mean, it's a whole
Yeah.
variety of
Right.
things. But no, I think the growth of people is the most exciting.
Yeah.
People who aren't doing something well, and you hold up the mirror and say,
Right.
you got to really look at
Yeah.
this, and here's how you might get better. That's the most interesting part. And then there's the not so fun part,
Yeah.
and you have to get good at that too. And I would say if there's one functional area I gravitate to, it's probably product more than anything.
Okay.
I'm not an engineer by trade, but I've done my 10,000 hours with engineers, so I understand them really well, and I know how to get product built and in the market.
Okay.
And that's the most fun for me.
So that's what gets you excited.
Yep.
I like that. So with your progression now, so when did you join Unbounce?
Beginning of 2024,
2024. And what were you doing? What was the one before that?
ACT.
Accent. Okay. So okay, ACT. All right.
Yep.
So then, first of all, why'd you choose Unbounce?
It was in my wheelhouse,
Mhm.
first and foremost. I understood it really, really well. And I had a vision for how I could go forward and be more successful than it was at the time.
Mhm.
I liked the investors. They were very direct and honest with me.
That's the Boston in you.
Yeah, that's the Boston in me. Like I like direct and honest.
Yep.
And they were.
Yeah.
So I knew what the problem was. I wasn't intimidated by it. I knew what approach I would take,
Mhm.
and that all just came together all at once.
So that was 2024.
It was 2023. The
Okay.
conversation started probably in October of 23.
And then
months.
the acquisition of Insightly was just last year, right?
Was July.
July.
Yeah, we closed it in July.
Okay. Yeah, this
and-
past year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say initially I was like, I don't know, I'm not so sure.
Mhm.
But then as I given a week or two to think about it and more conversation with my PE sponsor, the synergy started to make sense to me.
How was it introduced to you? Was it your PE coming to you saying, hey, you should look at them, or
Yeah.
were you proactively? Okay.
Yeah, you like to think that these acquisitions are all by design. They're kind of opportunistic.
Most of my that's actually for those that listen, like most acquisitions that I've like, once you peel back the covers, it's like two guys sitting at a bar. Hey, by the way, and all of a sudden there's like what like that's how Staples, like when
Yeah.
Staples bought my company, we were at $10 million.
Yeah.
And my CEO, no joke, was at a bar with a guy from Staples. They were like, yeah, we should do a partnership. He's like, ah, you should just buy us. And all of a sudden, one thing leads to another, and Staples buys us. I'm
Yeah.
like, there was no
Yeah.
strategy involved.
So you're saying the secret part out loud.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No, it's really we put a lot of due diligence into really going through.
But no, but honestly, that's why it took me a week. I was like, wait a minute, how are these parts all going to fit together?
Yeah.
And it did make sense.
Yeah.
It honestly did make sense. So our vision now is largely kind of what I saw over a year ago with my PE sponsor.
Okay.
And I believe we are right now not 100% of where I want to be, but certainly 65, 70% of the way to a platform that is comprehensive, compelling, and has real impact on small and mid-market businesses.
Love it. I mean, I've been asking everybody here, like, what's your waving, if you had a magic wand, what would a CRM look like for you, right? What's out of all the stuff you've seen,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. What's the special sauce of Insightment?
It's easier to implement.
Yep.
And cost of ownership is really in line.
Mhm. Yep.
We're not the least expensive solution, but we also don't crush you in year 2 and year 3 of your contract.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Unfortunately, I know
Yeah,
that also.
we know
well.
vendors that are really good at that.
Oh, I do too.
Um,
Yep.
and we're a highly integrated solution with comprehension,
Mhm.
but it's you're not spending 6 months getting up to speed
Yeah.
and getting it fully implemented. You're spending 6 weeks.
Right. Speed of
Yeah.
value, effectively, right?
Yeah, and it's designed so it's quicker to value,
Mhm.
and cost of ownership is in line, and we're a platform.
And you're baking a lot of AI into this. So what excites you about, there's a lot of, we just had a long conversation previously about like pros and cons of AI and whether
Yeah,
it's a fad or not, which I don't think any of us agreed with.
It's not a fad.
that was a nice conversation. I was like,
As soon as you said it was a fad, I wanted the
like maybe that's not the
microphone.
right word to use, but
Yeah.
what are you optimistic about when it comes to AI?
Sure. We Unbounce,
Mhm.
we were very good at AI.
Yep.
We started investing in AI in 2016,
Mhm.
actually, and turned a landing page platform into an experimentation and optimization platform,
Mhm.
right? And AI driven. And what I saw with Insightly was a company that had a great product, but hadn't made the investments in AI.
Mhm.
So when we brought the companies together, the Unbounce team knew the marketer really, really well.
Yep.
We didn't understand the sales buyer. Insightly understood the sales buyer really, really well. That is
Yep.
their buyer.
Yep.
But they didn't have AI.
Yep.
They hadn't made those investments there. And we did the transaction, and I went to my data science team and said, you guys have to get oriented to the sales buyer now,
Mhm.
because
Yep.
and the sales use case.
Yep.
And we've done that. We were doing generative AI before, OpenAI
2016.
took
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And so generative AI was pretty straightforward. And agentic AI is where we're going.
The agents. So just
Yeah.
agents
Yeah.
to do
I'm-
certain very automated.
And I don't know if it's going to kill SaaS in 2 months.
Yeah,
but
hey,
but
who
if it
knows what
does,
it's
we'll
gonna
be
kill in
ready.
2 months. It might kill a lot of things in 2 months, quite
It might,
frankly.
it might.
Yeah, like I said, we could have the Matrix conversation on another podcast, but I'm there.
But no, we feel like a lot of CRMs on the market. I think the count is like 1,700.
Yep.
Now, a lot of those are vertical, they're in
Yeah.
niches,
Yep.
and more power to them.
Mhm.
But a lot aren't.
Mhm.
And I think that a surprising number are sort of slow to this.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't
That's
either.
fine.
Yeah.
We're not. And some of the big folks that we compete with are already there. And we're getting there really quickly. But I think that a lot won't.
So the one question I have as it relates to AI, but the problem with CRM, and I'm curious how you guys are solving this, is garbage in, garbage out, right? So regardless, I thought AI was actually going to be the solver to that. Like, hey, you got disparate data sources all over the place. Screw it. Hey, AI, go fix all that stuff. And it's not good, right? Because it's pulling off of bad data. So how do you, from a hygiene standpoint, what does Insightly do to make sure that the data integrity is there that the AI can pull from?
Great question. Synchronized data, identity resolution, right? Making sure that you have, a foundation of truth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the truth?
Yep.
And it needs to be the CRM. We're doing that as well.
Okay.
Doesn't have the appeal of AI.
Yeah.
It's basically core data management.
Yeah.
And we believe in that. And data synchronization, identity resolution, and really pulling in all of the customer data that's sitting in the 1,000 sales acceleration applications on the market.
Don't get me started.
I mean, there's 1,000, but there's probably 20 or 30 that are really important.
Yep.
And making sure that all of that data gets unified and consolidated in the CRM is the foundation. And you really can't build a great AI solution without that.
Without that data.
That's our response.
That's the part that I don't think enough people are paying enough attention to is like, okay, AI is great, but it's just like, that's my like, I'm worried about AI. And I explained this earlier that we went from a search engine where you could kind of choose your source of truth to an answer engine.
Well,
and inherently it's pulling off of the internet, which can't be 100% accurate. So, but
Well,
people are taking that as the end.
What's interesting is if you look at the customer data platform category, and that category has raged now for 5, 6, 7 years. Largely the realm of B2C, much more B2B in the last several years.
Okay.
And I think that sort of aligns with the rise of AI. And well, you need the right data at the core of it to do that from a B2B perspective. So we're tracking very closely to that.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming out here, man. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the support. Love the partnership. And there's a reason that I'm partnered with them. I always say that I told Anish when I got into the sponsor game, I was like, I don't want to work with sponsors who don't share core values, who I don't believe in their product. And, because I won't be able to NASCAR logo here, and I got to be able to speak authentically to it. And what I've seen from Insightly is absolutely, it's worth checking out.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks again.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. Cheers.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I think that is it. I am going to stop talking now. I'm going to go grab a fucking drink, and I'm then going to go get stoned probably and watch Glengarry Glen Ross.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm going to get stoned probably and watch Glengarry Glen Ross. That'll be cut out. Absolutely. Yeah, I got my pen. Yeah, giddy up on the way up. On the way up. Yeah, hey, it's legal in Massachusetts, man.
Don't tell the people who work.
I won't. I won't say a word. I won't say a word. We'll take a walk.